And okay, I think we're good. Make sure we're awesome. All right. Okay. There is the link for Owen McDonald to use. I wish I had. Okay, I can do that. Then let's get the link to. And there is the link to hello on McDonald. The link is right up above there for you to join. Okay. It's on the Google Meet place. I put the link. It's right above your first comment. Here I can I'll put it up for you again. Okay. All righty.
Hello?
Hello. Gotcha.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Fantastic. Brilliant. And am I all like audio and visual and stuff clear on your channel? Like,
yeah, I can. If I can hear it, they can hear it. Let me just say something, anything.
Okay. Hello, everyone.
Yeah, I'm registering it.
Excellent. Have you had a nice week, Dave? How's it been for the last week?
It's been fine and dandy. You?
I'm actually quite knackered. I've been university is ticking on. I've had work quite a bit as well. So
you're still in college?
I switched degree. I picked a different one. I took a bit of time off. I was working for a few years, and now I'm getting a degree in something else, a little bit different. Still somewhat similar, but it's like semi-linked to my work now. So it's a different course. And I've got athletics as well, so that my legs are a bit sore from that.
Okay.
But no, I'm glad we're all well. I don't know how you wanted to approach this one, like, because I've got like a few notes on like what I want to sort of talk about. But whether you want to continue from where we left off, like, it's up to you, really. I sort
of. You know what? Why don't you? Okay, I'll just bring up a few things that I noticed from our last discussion, and that is, how can you sit there and say that socialism is not the most inherently unfair system and selfish system on the planet?
So, if I was going to have a look at socialism, at the core of the system is, or a core of the frame of thinking is addressing the unjust power structures that exist on our planet at the moment, as caused by the capitalist system. So,
but socialism will always end up with really unfair. I mean, every time they've tried it, it's ended up with really unfair power structures. At least in a capitalist system, you can move up, you can move down.
So, we'll come on to that in a second, but we, at the frame of socialist thinking, of left-wing thinking, really, if we look back through history, is addressing the power structure that exists in society, right? You look at a feudal society and people have said, oh, actually, there's something quite wrong here. You've got lords and you've got the powerful basically deciding everything, despite the fact that we're in the fields tilling the crops, or in the factories putting together our cars and paving our roads and doing all the things that make society possible. And so socialism...
Okay, hold on. Stop.
If we... Should I just finish this bit, Dave?
Oh, okay.
At the core of socialism, therefore, is a way of looking at how workers produce and saying the things that workers produce, the way that society operates, should be democratically operated by said workers and by said functioning parts of society rather than bosses and landowners and a whole class of people basically selecting themselves as those in charge. That's what socialism is, essentially, and any left-wing thing.
Then why, if that's the thought, then why is it that after the Russian Revolution and before the Russian Revolution, Russia was still in essentially a feudal system in the 20th century?
Yeah.
But when the communists took over, when they were under their feudal system, the farmers would give half their food to essentially people living in a city. When the communists took over, they took 100% of the farmers' food at the barrel of a gun and brought it to the cities. So then the farmers went out and got all the little bits. By the way, they confiscated all their farming equipment too and gave it to them as the government decided they needed it. They went out and they picked up all the little bits of grain and shit that had been left over. Well, Lenin got wind of it, came back, took that grain, and then killed the farmers. So please explain to me how the peasants in the field were better off under communist Lenin than they were under the previous system, because at least under the previous system, they had food for the winter.
Okay, so it's a really interesting example, really interesting nation, actually, Russia. It's fascinating. I think the key is in what you said right at the start there. Russia was a feudal system long beyond the other European powers. It was lagging well behind Britain, France, America, obviously not a European power, but a world player at that point in history, precisely because their system of economy was an autocracy. It was the Tsar and his family and his close associates running the country as their own play yard. And so as a result, Russia was abysmal to live in for basically all of the 19th century, and had it been allowed to continue the 20th century. The Russian Revolution, I think, is such an important moment because it's one of the first times that workers actually saw the way society was and led themselves to overthrow a very, very bad system.
And then they all ended up worse off.
Now, that's not quite true. I think that we need to have...
It objectively is.
Well, let's have a look at the context firstly. So
that's why Fabergé eggs are so valuable.
Russia was fighting in a world war at this point. World War I's happening. You've got the biggest global war that the world has seen at this point. Hence, to call it the Great War, they call it. Yeah. And so when the revolution happens, there's a war going on. There's already lots of land, resources, people being put to the war effort as by the Russian, government, right? The Tsar and his government put them to this job. And so when the revolution happens, which was justified, the Tsar and his royal family were not good leaders. Russia was in a bad place. They inherit this massive societal problem, right? There's not enough food. The lines of trade have been disrupted because there's a war going on. You've got right-wing armies and the generals of the previous army. They're still there. They still want Russia back to be, like a czarist state.
Well, the reason the lines were so destroyed was by Russia's own military tactics. Russia went scorched earth, which is a practice of you literally burn everything down. You give the enemy army that's conquering you, in this case the Germans, literally nothing to live off of. And they did the same thing with Napoleon, and in the end, the same thing that defeated Hitler in the East defeated Napoleon. And that's the Russian winter. And with no shelter, no food, no anything, obviously you're going to freeze to death.
Exactly, right?
But it's interesting you brought up the World War I, but in terms of casualties, in terms of loss of life, after Russia became communist and Stalin was the leader, it was far more bloody for the Russians than World War I. I mean, because Stalin didn't care.
We're getting on to Stalin, yeah. So if we're looking for this course for history, the initial vision of the Russian Revolution from Marxists and communists, and Marx himself, and you've got your Trotskys and all the people who were the thinkers at that time, was for global communism. The idea that was put out by the initial theorists was for the workers of the world to unite. And so that this doesn't happen has a massive impact, a fork in the road, and that allows, as we've seen, power to concentrate into connected officials and to people who were in a position to, have more social capital and have more standing within various circles. And yes, that leads to Lenin's vision being forced into rather unpleasant actions, and then Stalin coming to the fore.
But again,
now, hold on a second, Dave. Hold on.
All right.
So that obviously is a bad course because Stalin was not a good leader for Russia. However, there's several important things to note there. Firstly, the initial act of overthrowing the Tsar was not wrong. The Tsar's governance of Russia was abysmal for millions of Russians. You only have to look at how Russia improved in many ways in terms of its literacy. And whilst it's true that absolutely there were some very bad things that happened in the Soviet, in Russia following this, once Stalin and his government, because again, there was another war, there's more things happening in the world that contribute to why Russia was not in a good place. After World War II, after Stalin's gone, suddenly some of the more genuinely left-wing ideas that was at the heart of the revolution start coming into place. Suddenly, Russians have access to food, healthcare, education. Suddenly, sports programs are put in, and the Soviet Union is like one of the world leaders at football and hockey and at the Olympics. You only have to look at how, in so many ways, their society actually improved in some ways because of the areas that were more closely linked to left-wing ideals that benefited them. But also, we have to remember that capitalism is a global system, right? And so capitalists in Britain, France, America look at what happened in Russia and look at how the existing power structure there was overthrown and think, oh my God, if we don't do something, this is going, they're going to have their vision, right? They're going to see top governments topple in all sorts of places. And so we can see that there's a right-wing reaction across the globe to that Russian incident. In Europe, that's through fascism. That's through people from the far right, like Hitler, basically saying we're going to not let the communists do this. He wasn't, Dave.
Yes,
come on.
Was.
He really wasn't, Dave.
He was a socialist.
They put socialist in the name because it was a popular idea.
And
right? It's
Hitler
called
hated
National
communists.
Socialist. Yes, because he's right-wing, Dave.
No,
the communists
he
say
is a socialist.
Dave, we get the term privatization.
He nationalized all private industries.
That's not true, Dave.
Yes, it is.
We get the term privatization from Nazi Germany.
No,
that describes,
we
do, Dave. We do.
No, we don't.
That's
you
how
had to be a member
companies,
of the Nazi Party to own a business. That is nationalization.
Yeah, because they're fascists. That's because they're fascists. They want total control. But the people who bankrolled them, people who were at the core of their movement, were capitalists who said, we want someone to stop the communists from taking over. So here are the Nazis. Will give you control of private industry, will basically make it impossible for any labor movements or workers to strike, will literally put the socialists and communists in jail, and anyone who's left-wing's got off to the concentration camps. And now you've got free trade to do that.
I have to respond to a few of these points. Okay, you say that things got better after Stalin's death. Well, first off, I'm gonna go ahead at Stalin. Absolute monarchies are generally not a good idea because for every one good king you get or queen, there's usually about 10 of them that are dog shit because it's not your qualifications, it's who you happen to be born to. Okay?
Yeah.
So I generally think the czars were going to lose power anyway. Now, the brutal way they lost it is a matter for history. But if things got better in Russia, then why is it that every single decade subsequent World War II, you literally had stores that had nothing in them because the Soviet Union couldn't actually produce anything, or it was allocated by the government, and anyone that wasn't in the military got screwed? Another point is, why is it that the few remaining communist countries are decades behind us in technology because the only technical advancements they get are the ones that they can steal, which pretty much all of the Russian technology of the day back in the day was stolen from us. And finally, you are correct that communism, or at least the Russians, and albeit socialism, is a system based more on who you know versus what you know. And in a capitalist constitutional republic, you can move up, you can move down, because you're the son of a super successful, let's say, business tycoon. Well, due to shitty decisions, you can be homeless on the street smoking crack.
Okay, so we'll come to why...
You seriously think that Paris Hilton is capable of running the Hilton hotel empire?
I think you're actually making a point about capitalism
no.
here, right? Because Paris Hilton, regardless of her merit or talent, is basically going to be fine no matter what, right?
Well,
she inherits somebody.
Paris Hilton is a businesswoman in her own right.
But she inherited the Hilton, or she is going to inherit the Hilton empire.
She got famous on her own, and that's why her makeup sells.
Dave, she's a Hilton. The Hilton
She got famous
industry.
On a show called The Simple Life.
Yes, but she was already from a very wealthy family, which gave her the connections to make that. And even if she wasn't, she's got that waiting for her.
She got that job because she's hot. Now, granted, these days it's because of plastic, but back in the day...
I don't care what Paris looks like, Dave. I'm talking about the money, the wealth is there waiting for her because she has a very wealthy father. Yeah, she's got a wealthy family.
And a wealthy
So what we're talking about...
And
exactly,
most
right?
Rich
She's
families,
from money, and
most rich families are broke 3 or 4 generations onwards. Why is it that, okay, you get a bunch of money? Why is it that... I don't know the rate of soccer players. I think that's your big sport over across the pond. Yeah. But 90% of NBA players, and these guys make millions over the course of their career, they are broke 3 years after retiring. 75% of NFL players are broke. And these guys have access to financial planners and all that stuff. They shouldn't logically be broke. But they spend all the money.
Okay, so the lives of sports stars, I think, is an interesting sort of side tangent, and we'll come back to Russia in a second. So I want to continue on that. But sports players, a lot of them, because sport is one of the few places that has to have some genuine merit there. Like, if you can have $1 billion behind you, but if you can't kick a ball straight or score a basket, then you're not going to get picked, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
A lot of these people come, they get scouted, they join a team, they're amazing, and they're living a high life, and they go from earning maybe nothing, or because they might have been picked when they were a kid, or maybe they're earning not much to then suddenly having like a multi-million contract. And so when you've got that much money, the elements of cultural capital become more readily available to you. So jewelry, cars, living the high life as such. But because sport relies on that high, because it relies on the adrenaline and the emotion and the living everything to the full, when that stops, lots and lots of players end up not really knowing what to do with themselves. And so those who don't make the successful transition can sometimes just burn through their money really quickly and end up bankrupt. That isn't really, I don't think. I mean, firstly, actually, that's a point about how capitalism isn't really healthy for the mind, right? If you just throwing lots of money at someone's not good, because in a lot of cases I want
to add a quick rebuttal to that. The reason that most of them are broke, not all, but the reason most of them go broke, yes, is part of it is living the high life, buying everyone in the club drinks, and that typical shit, which will drain a bank account quick. But the other one is they buy their mom a house or mom and dad a house. They fund their brother's restaurant idea. They do this, that, and the third. They make terrible investments with their money. The ones that still have money literally just take their money and say, the family isn't rich, I'm rich. They might help them here and there, but they literally just invest their money into regular stocks, and they don't buy a super big house. And they're set for life.
I'm not too sure how the sort of spending habits of these people's that important, really. If you're making the money they do, most of them, just.
But once the checks dry up, it's not that hard to burn through $20 million.
Well, of course, because if you're spending loads, then it's gone quite quickly.
And also,
the point there, though, is also, I think, that a society that has these athletes doing so much with so many resources should cater itself more towards mental health and looking after people and having the tools to be able to actually.
Well, that's why they go broke. They look after people. They look after people, namely their family.
I mean, I don't think that's quite true.
Who's just as broke as they were at one point.
But firstly, it's not like buying your family a house and lifting them into a more comfortable position is not like that big a drain on it, right? The issue is more the fact that these people who spend like £100,000 in an evening or like $1 million on a new car straight away are going to have a big problem when they eventually don't have $1 million coming into the bank account. Right?
What is, if I may, what is the average cost of an average house in England off the top of your head?
Top of my head, probably about 500,000. It costs a lot of money. It's not something people can just easily buy.
That'd be about $750,000 in the U.S. You know, if you have, that can easily spiral out of control. Not to mention, a lot of the more money you make, the more taxes you pay. I mean, if you make $10 million, you didn't make $10 million. You don't have $10 million. You have bare minimum 5. Because you have to give half of it to the government.
The richest don't actually pay that much tax. It's more the spending habits.
They do.
They really don't, Dave. America's got terrible corporate tax rates.
The top 0.1% pay 40% of the tax load.
Well, they're trillionaires and billionaires, and I want to check that stat in a second. But anyway,
the only trillionaires might be the Saudi Arabian princes. They're not in America.
I say trillionaires. They'll be trillionaires soon, the way the world's heading. But no, capitalists do not. Capitalists, Dave, are in government spending money to ensure that policies aren't written to pay tax.
Okay,
we'll come on to that in a second, Dave, because I want to go back to Russia quickly. So there are a few things you said. I think it's important. I think it's important to discuss the past. You're quite right. Life under Stalin was not great. And in many ways, Russia, from the dream that started out, did get worse over time. You know, the Soviet Union did collapse eventually, did break into many splinter states. However, I think there's several points that have to be stated here. Firstly, is in that word itself, state. The idea of socialism is to move beyond nations and of individual countries sort of competing against each other. The whole point is for global worker solidarity. So when you have a state, you keep that existing class structure. Well, not necessarily one world government, but not confining ourselves to borders and having Russia v France v Britain and all these countries trying to get better with each other.
Okay, then that's ridiculous because...
Why is it ridiculous, Dave?
Because I don't really give a flying fuck what's going on in Japan. I'm more worried about my country.
But you use things from Japan, and we all do. We all use various devices. So what the socialist argument is, Dave...
doesn't mean I care. They can deal with their problems.
The socialist argument, Dave, is that these things are constructed. They're social constructs. They're not, whilst of course, there's going to be differences in the sense of culture and the sense of language and stuff. But in terms of our interests, we all want to eat. We all want to have a house. We all want to have a nice life. And by connecting the workers and making production a democracy,
I am not responsible for my neighbor's fridge. That's his problem to make sure it's full of food, not mine.
Okay, but we as a society are better when we come together. That's at the point of socialism, right? If we don't have just a class of people. Well, generally, yes, Dave, because look at how
the more you share, the less you have.
That's very selfish and silly way of thinking, right?
Well, human beings are selfish creatures. I mean, and I have no problem saying, yes, I am selfish.
But, okay, it's easy to say that when, if someone showed up at your fridge personally and said, Rob, give me half of what's in it. Of course, when you think of it like that, there's, some reticence, right? What we're talking about is
I don't want my taxes going up to pay for a bunch of people that can't be bothered to fill their own fridges with food.
Okay, well, again, there's some very right-wing ideas packed into that statement, which we're going to come back to, put a pin in it. What I want to focus on now for a second is Russia, right? Is the state. So when you have a state, especially when you have a state that's basically been cut off from the rest of the world, right, because of the Cold War and because of the Eastern blocs and the rivalry of America, you have that power structure. You have a state that basically says, right, we need to fight for ourselves against the capitalist world. And that's how you get that power structure forming, which was the opposite of what they wanted. They didn't want a class structure. They didn't want that powerful organization forming. And that's how you get, like you say, the corruption and the problems there. They aren't criticisms, though, of the left-wing things that were put in place in Russia. The idea that housing should be something everyone gets a place to live, everyone gets food allocated, everyone gets something out of
and
education
they ended
and
up living
healthcare.
in crappy, shitty concrete tombs.
Well, that's better than being homeless, Dave.
Have you seen the concrete buildings?
Well, I think there's something quite nice about everyone getting home, rather than walking past nice, pretty like apartments you can never afford, and then having to settle for terrible apartments that are owned by con man landlords that basically can run it however cheap, however badly they like, because there's nothing in place to stop them. No,
versus communism, where nothing works, and well,
that's not true, Dave. Russia did many, many great things because of the left-wing things they did. Like, you know, we got to. I think there's something to be said about the fact that for a very long time, it was much, much better to live in parts of Russia than it was to live in many parts of America. Like, you know, and I think, well, there was no one homeless in Russia for a very long time. Not true of America. Everyone got healthcare and education in Russia. Is that true in America? The places.
Yes. Everyone gets healthcare in America, even if you can't.
Are you kidding, Dave? Yeah,
No.
Exactly. Yeah, you have to pay, so you can't get it because you've not got enough money because it's privatized, and that only worsens.
What caused the American health thing was the creation of. Oh God, I can't remember.
Creation of capitalism.
No, it was something else. No, everyone gets. Doctors have a duty to treat, even if they know you're not going to pay. This is why your hospital bill is so outrageous. But let me ask you this: which is better? I would rather pay my insurance premiums, and I know I can get rapid health care. Versus there's a story over in across the where you live, where the Just Stop Oil assholes stopped a big deal highway in your neck of the woods. I can't remember what it was called, but it's one of the major roadways over in England, I think. Somebody had an ultra aggressive form of cancer, and they missed their appointment because of it. They wouldn't be able to get another appointment for a month. In my country, you would either be seen later that day or tomorrow.
Okay. The reason the NHS in our country is struggling is because right-wing governments have successively defunded it and taken the funds out of it for private American capitalists to basically buy up stuff and sell. Right-wing people don't want things to be available for everyone because they can't make profit off it.
How do you think the government makes money? Because there's only one way it makes money.
What does that have to do with what I said, Dave?
No, everything that you want costs money. You think doctors should work for free?
That's not what I said, Dave. The resources of society.
What for you to get what you want, where everybody gets all this free health care on demand and blah, 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 you're going to need a lot of doctors and a lot of nurses. Now, it's a very difficult skill to get.
Absolutely. That's why there should be resources.
Are you going to get the money to pay for these people?
There are some extremely wealthy corporations that need taxing. We have very low tax rates in the UK. You have low tax rates in America. There's lots of money resources sat at the moment being not spent.
And what happens when you raise taxes? The businesses are going to leave. Leaving
well, yes, that's why, Dave. That's when, firstly, not quite true. There's lots of things you can nationalize.
Why is it fair
and secondly,
that I have to give money at the barrel of the government gun? I don't mind being charitable, but I will do so of my own volition. I don't want the government to force me to be charitable.
There's so many things. Okay. Most people aren't coming to you, Dave, to try and fund an entire country. They're coming to the many, many corporations that have billions, trillions sat in their pockets, not being taxed, able to basically live a separate life to the rest of us.
Again, I would like to point out the top 1% pay fucking over half the taxes in my country.
Dave.
Yes, they do.
And even if that were true, that still wouldn't be enough. They're still taking off billions from what society is.
What do you think?
Right?
What do you think an appropriate tax rate should be for anyone making over, let's say, $10 million? So at the $10,000,001, what should the tax rate on that dollar be?
The phrase making here does a lot of work, right? Because what's happening, another central criticism of capitalism, which is why we want cooperation and stuff, is that no one makes millions and millions just by themselves, right? There's so many branches of labor and production involved in making $1 million, $1 billion, as people do, that it's an untrue reflection of what society has, right? When you buy an iPhone in a shop or any mobile phone, right, you're buying the product of thousands of laborers across the world. People in the Congo who get it out of the mine, people in China putting it together, the shippers who've taken it across the various continents to make it, guys in the shop who are setting it all up for you to buy in the shop.
You're not answering my question.
Well,
what should the tax rate be then?
Okay, but you're missing my point, which is that the end goal
I don't care, because all those laborers that you're whining about, they had the materials to make the phone paid for. They had their workspace paid for. They had the air conditioning in the workspace paid for. Their wages are guaranteed, not the owner's wages, mind you. But
the guys in the Congo, Dave, in the slave mines, the guys in the slave mine in the Congo, is anything for them guaranteed?
Well, I'm sorry. Go start a revolution in the Congo.
That's not an answer to what I said, Dave. That's not an answer to what I said.
That's exactly an answer to what I said.
It's not, Dave. You said their stuff's there for them. They can just, they're fine. We've got a nice time. I'm telling you, it's not. You're giving a
word salad answer to a very simple question. It's not a word salad answer, Dave.
I'm telling you why your question is coming from the whole place. What would be the
appropriate tax rate on somebody who made over 10 million? So at the first dollar, $10,000,001, what should that first dollar's tax rate be?
Right. I'll come to that tax rate question once I've explained why it's a poorly framed question. It should be TLDR, it should be much, much more than it is now, which is not enough, right? And I want billionaires basically not to exist anymore, right? There shouldn't be, if you're making $1 billion, then that's too much. Because it's theft, right? It's taken,
no, it's
as
not.
You've explained.
No, it's not.
How have we got all our computers, Dave? How are the people in the mines?
Elon Musk, the richest man in the world. Well, no, the Saudi. Fuck it. I'll go with the Saudi princes. They sell a product everyone needs. Oil.
Okay. You're literally talking about an absolute monarchy where people die if they question the
No, they die because of Sharia law.
They die because of the right-wing structure in place. And yes, part of that is that, which is a right-wing system, a system of control and power. But you're making a point for me. The places that have this money and capital and wealth are generated through oppression.
Okay, all right. Let's go with it. Let's go with a country that is actually your socialist paradise.
There's
Kuwait.
No country that's a socialist paradise.
Wait.
Are you? Dave, you've not been listening. I don't want countries, Dave.
In Kuwait, every citizen is guaranteed a 2-bedroom apartment, a car, an education, blah, 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 all this fun stuff. Because of all the money they make selling the world oil. It's a product that, like it or not, our entire society is dependent on. I'll say this, at least at the moment.
Right. Kuwait is not a socialist. It's not at all a socialist paradise. It's got an emirate, a leader who is. It's not a democracy, Dave. So it's not relevant at all to what we're saying.
Democracies are fucking dumb in the first place.
That's not. Again, that's a completely different thing. That's a different point. Also, you're literally like oil. The burning of fossil fuels is quite literally pushing us into disaster as a planet, right? As our species is under threat, our way of life.
Oh, and unless you can live like Amish, you're kind of fucked.
That's not true again, Dave. But we've got firstly, right? The fact that the capitalist system basically, if you make money, it's fine. You sell money, you sell your stuff, and it's fine. And the thing we're selling is killing the planet. There's your bullet in the system, right? There's the massive problem. Secondly, right? There's nothing to laugh about. It's true.
How do you expect society to run at the moment without fossil fuels?
Okay, well, in the last discussion we had, we quite literally spoke about nuclear power. We spoke about wind, solar, hydroelectric,
but that doesn't
geothermal.
Get trucks moving from point A to point B. Okay. Nuclear power is fine for the power grid. I'm all for that, but I don't think nuclear-powered cars are a good idea.
Okay, it's not nuclear powered car, Dave. Electric vehicles, which if you switch the main power source from fossil fuel burning to the various things I've just mentioned, you can charge the vehicles without burning off
Charging
fossil
takes
fuels in the first place.
hours. Do you know
Okay,
how
but
difficult it is to keep kids entertained? You're gonna literally charge your vehicle for 2 hours at a charging station and keep a 2-year-old happy? That's not.
Okay, that's not technology improves over time. Electric vehicles are getting better and better. Imagine if the
agree,
money
but
just
they're
imagine,
still
Dave,
not-
if
they're
the
still
money
not
the money
practical.
the money being hoarded currently by those corporations I mentioned, by those fossil fuel companies, if we said, actually, no, this is a societal product, we're going to put this back into society and improve our scientific capabilities, all of a sudden, scientists might be able to make it a bit better. Yeah? Also, you've got to think, going back a moment, because there's lots and lots of things here which I'm like having to write down because you're making lots of points and stuff. Like, if we go back to the other problems in society, if people are able to come together and cooperate and work together on these big problems, we'll get to a solution more quickly, rather than leaving it in the hands of like the wealthiest people on the planet who have a direct interest in maintaining their wealth, and many of whom do not care so long as they are absolutely content. Hence the existence of these Emiratis and these nations which are atrocious, because many Middle Eastern countries are not very nice to live in, precisely because they make money selling the oil and maintaining their power. And Western capitalists are happy for that to remain in place as long as they get their oil, or in the Congo's case, get their phones, and nothing gets done, and there's just oppression and misery across the world. Let's go back a second. There's a few things. Insurance in America I think you're completely missing the mark. And insurance companies are notorious for booting people off if they see weakness in their standing. People go bankrupt, paying off hospital pay, like the doctor, the person. When we talk about doctors, we're not criticizing them as such, because they're just a medical professional. We're talking about the system that makes the hospital bill someone or makes them bill a patient. All of these things are connected, right? The system of power we have in place is fundamentally broken. And
all right, hold up. I can see there could be some issues where it would be more advantageous for some laws to be changed, like at pharmacies, where it's illegal for the pharmacist to tell the person it'd be cheaper to go out of pocket versus going through your insurer. So I'm always up for that.
Yeah.
But
then fix the societal problem.
I've never once heard that. And again, just me personally, I have really good insurance. Doesn't affect my paycheck at all. The amount that's taken out is minuscule, and I have literally awesome care. And my deductible for any sort of emergency or operation or anything is jack and shit.
Okay, I'm very glad you're in a good place, Dave.
Set yourself up for good health care.
Dave, people live paycheck to paycheck. They can't just suddenly find the money to suddenly have massive
for a massive
insurance.
Corporation like I do. I know to the corporation, I'm just a number. But God, do I get a lot of benefits.
Okay, Dave, corporations like Amazon, Walmart, McDonald's, the biggest big corporations, they don't pay unless you've got like a good position in those corporations. Most people do not have the means to be able to afford this.
I'm making more money now than I ever have. I make money
broaden your horizons. Broaden beyond yourself, Dave.
I get a raise twice a year, for Christ's sakes.
I'm very glad you're not. If that's your situation, you're not most people. You cannot afford the insurance you're talking about. You can't.
Amazon, your great healthcare, of that, has the money to outbid every fucking other employer.
Yes, another problem with capitalism, Dave. Amazon buys up so much stuff, but no one else can compete, which links back to that profitability thing you were talking about earlier.
So what do you fucking want? Sell your goods through Amazon.
System, Dave, how you
can sell your goods. You can set up an Amazon store right now today and sell your shit online to a worldwide market.
You need money to do all those things. Most people don't have the money to suddenly turn a profit from doing that. Well, enough to actually get it started. You can get a credit card
and probably start yourself off.
Also, Dave, we were literally talking, Dave, about...
I don't know the laws over in your area, but in my neck of the woods, going bankrupt isn't that big of a deal.
Dave, if you've got imagine, right? So we're talking about this class mobility thing we were talking about earlier, right? So you can't, if you're paying like paycheck to paycheck, putting all money into rent and stuff, you can't just go to the bank and say, I want a credit card with just a load of money for me to just invest in. They won't give you that.
Are you
And
kidding? They mail out credit card applications all the fucking time.
And then
They're
when you
part
have
of
to
your
pay
daily
it back
mail.
and you can't, Dave, when you have to pay it
So
back
you
and you
pay
can't,
the
you default on
little
your
amount
loans.
back. It's not all at once.
It's not a little amount, Dave.
And
to make
also,
the money you're
do you know
talking about,
do you know what affects people's credit, at least in my country, for the exact same amount of time as going bankrupt? And it happens about to 80% of people that enter into this shit. It's called divorce.
What?
If you get divorced in America, it affects your credit rating the exact same amount of time and the exact same way as going bankrupt. When you go bankrupt, you'll get shit card offer. You'll still get credit card offers. They're just dog shit.
What does divorce have to do with the larger points about capitalist
My point
like,
is
immobility?
you brought up going bankrupt as some horrible thing. And it's like,
because
well,
it is.
But it affects your life the exact same way as getting divorced.
Well, no, I mean, if a person
Which happens to 80% of marriages.
Okay, if someone goes if a corporation goes bankrupt, the costs are put onto the workers, right? If you go bankrupt, just the average person, well, we are, Dave.
No, they're not.
Like Billy the billionaire does not face he loses control of his shop. Great, he goes off to his yacht and he sits around trading stocks again. The workers in the factory get shut down. Dave.
They can end up with nothing if a business goes bankrupt.
Unlikely. The workers in the factory, Dave, who lose their jobs, are then left scrambling around, thinking, "Oh, where's my next? How am I going to pay my rent? How am I going to pay my bills?"
All their wages have to be made good by law.
Yes, there's part of the
liquidation.
Some protections, Dave.
And they have to be given a severance.
Thanks to left-wing action, there's things like that in place in some states. In many states, it's not the case. In many places in the world where right-wing people have more control over, those things are not as in place. Even with them in place, that still will not solve the fact that you have lost the thing that's coming into your bank account to afford your water, food, energy, transport, all these things which are privatized and are there basically for billionaires to make money off, which make a disaster. There's not the things in place. And so you've got a major, major flaw of this system, of this capitalist system, which a socialist system, going back to it, would fix. Because in a socialist system...
No, it wouldn't. I'd rather pay...
You've already said, Dave, that you've got a great insurance.
The water system is already privatized. The city owns that. I'm just paying them to make sure that the water is clean to drink. Okay?
If you don't pay your water
and can you name me anything the government does efficiently and well and better than the private sector? Because again, the private sector is worried about a balance sheet. The government just spends money like a lunatic.
Okay, so several things there. The private sector is great if you have money, which most people do not, which like I've been saying quite a few times now, we can't afford to just go and spend all our money in the private sector, so we are having to rely on the things the government provide. The government is better for most people because most people cannot afford to access it. For left-wing initiatives, there's lots of things in place for people. However, right-wing bureaucracy, right-wing machinations, right-wing defunding of things for private industry to take over makes these problems. So we'll go back to the NHS, for instance. The NHS is literally the reason I'm alive today. If there wasn't an NHS, my parents might not be able to have afforded paying off a doctor and all of that when we were having these, as a child, as is true for millions of people. It's the defunding of hospitals.
And if it wasn't for
clinics.
our capitalist medical system, I would have died in 1982. And my parents' insurance paid for it. It literally cost them like $100.
Clearly that isn't the cost of it now, is it? Hospital stay costs a lot more. Things were better in the past because capitalism things were not as right wing. The welfare state had not been attacked so fragrantly. I mean, what, you're like 40 or so? I don't want to guess. I don't want to say your age 42. Incorrectly. Like, are you? Okay, so you've come in at a time before Reaganomics, before the right-wing shift of most nations.
No, I came in during Reagan. I was born during Reagan.
But the welfare state still had more resources there, Dave. Right? Also, you've said already in this stream that you've got...
massively expanded the welfare state.
Good, because they needed it. Because
Yeah,
right-wing
and now we're suffering the consequences of it.
you're suffering the consequences of
He
capitalism, Dave.
also opened the floodgates to China, which crippled American manufacturing.
Okay, that is capitalism in action. Capitalists
Well, geez,
saw
Bill
cheaper
Clinton is
labor.
pretty far on the left.
He really isn't, Dave. We get the term neoliberalism
and Barry
from this whole
Obama
generation.
did nothing to fix it.
Okay, the Democrats, Dave, are not a left-wing party. They're a right-wing party. They believe in the capitalist ideals just like lots of right-wing people do. The difference is they are more liberal, and so they believe in trying to fix it a bit more. They put in plasters to try and fix it. The welfare state is a plaster.
Goods from China and then force
Okay, let me finish this bit, Dave. Let me finish this bit. The welfare state, whilst is something we support as left-wing people, we want to address the overall problem, which is the societal inequality that causes the need for welfare in the first place, right? So when Democrats say, "Oh, we want to, put money into welfare and stuff," whilst of course we want that like now because it is an immediate plaster for things, it's not like the overall end goal. So when Bill Clinton does things in the 90s, which are also by the way right-wing, like the like NAFTA and like various trade deals and stuff are for capitalists. They're not like working class worker movement things. They're things that we don't agree with. They're not like the socialist mantra of Bill Clinton. We want Democrats over Republicans because, well, I say we want. Democrats are better than Republicans because they support left-wing ideas more than right-wing ones. More than right-wing parties like Republicans. However, it's not enough, and they are still engaging in the same practices. So whilst Clinton and Obama are better than like Bush and certainly Trump, they still aren't enough. And
except
in
Trump
the
wanted to
bigger
tear
concept,
NAFTA apart.
Sorry?
Trump wanted to tear NAFTA apart.
Okay, Trump is an
because
interesting
he was
case
putting
because
America first.
American capitalists first, and it's a saying, and it's not like a genuine thing you should
put
believe.
America first.
American capitalists, yes. The rights of workers were much, much worse under Trump.
To manufacture shit here, not send it overseas.
Not actually true, Dave. And also, if we're looking at that as well, we're looking at a cycle of capitalism, which, like you said yourself, right? American capitalists moved their stuff over to the Far East, right? Because they saw cheaper labor. They saw, we have workers' rights in America. We don't have that in these countries. See you later, America. And so, because we're a system that's run on just like money and on who's got more money, that's where all the stuff goes. And so you've got suddenly loads of people who need help from the welfare state, right as it's being massively eviscerated and cut by right-wing politicians, as Republicans all settle on the line of, we don't need this anymore.
Then why is it people still use the welfare state as a lifestyle choice?
Well, it's not, again, another right-wing argument. The welfare state is needed for a lot of people because we can't. It's not a lifestyle choice, Dave. It's needed. It's vital.
Okay, how about we increase benefits, but we put a hard time limit on it? And this time limit is for life. How about we fix
the problem in the first place, Dave? Like, we both know, right? You've pretty much hinted it yourself, right? The welfare state isn't what we should aim for. We should aim to fix the societal problem in the first place. What's the saying? Prevention is better than cure. Let's prevent the
capitalism
inequality.
Is the cure.
It's the reason it's there. Well, if we're at a welfare state, Dave, people would be in really bad conditions.
They'd be worse off. You know what's funny? You mentioned trillionaires.
Yeah.
There are trillionaires in this world. I was actually wrong. Do you know where they are?
Where are they, Dave?
In Venezuela, because the Venezuelan whatever the fuck is so worthless that literally 10 American dollars will make me a trillionaire in Venezuela. Now, am I actually a trillionaire? No, because bread costs $3 trillion.
Okay. Venezuela, as we've already said, established Russia, right? It's a state. It's competing on a capitalist market.
No, it went socialist. They nationalized
the world around it, Dave.
They nationalized oil, and it all went to shit. Because government,
Dave,
as sure as the sun will rise in the east, will fuck it all up.
Okay, we've already established, Dave, that states are not what the socialists want. We want a worker-owned world. We want production everywhere to be democratic.
Well, you're going to have to have a hierarchy in that.
So, let me finish because there's a point somewhere, Dave, right? There's a point where you've got to actually engage with what I'm sort of saying here, right? When we have a state in a capitalist world, they have to make decisions upon the logics of capitalism, right? So they're still going to be trading their stuff on a marketplace, And when that market changes, or when, more importantly, capitalist nations decide we don't like that you've nationalized things, we're going to do something about that, suddenly sanctions get put in place. Suddenly, right-wing figures conspire and undermine the operations of the state. And we're in that state, as there's been obviously power structures there, because it's not, you still have to have those structures in a capitalist world because of you've got to engage with the stuff that's going on in that world, and problems arise, right? Because all of those things are in place. However, again, crucially, the actual act of saying no, resources in this nation should be operated by people like for the nation, not for like, I don't know, corporation number 20 or whatever. Like that in itself is good. We only have to look at your country compared to how things are in like European nations, just for an immediate example. In fact, even actually looking at the best period of time for your nation, right? I say best. In many ways, one of your best presidents, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and the creation of the big society.
He was dog
yes,
shit.
Absolutely not, Dave. Absolutely not. Your best president who put in place things still in place today. Public programs for people made your country livable for millions. Yeah?
And it would have blown up. And it would have blown up in his face. His great the New Deal, I believe it was called.
The New Deal, yes.
Yes.
Crucial.
That would have blown up in his face had it not been for Europe going to war.
No way. No way.
Yes, way. And also, Dave, a lot of you leftists like to talk about the 1950s as the greatest economic boom of America. Well, yeah, because every other country was still recovering at the time. We were the only motherfuckers that could make shit.
Yeah, and it's a good thing you
Europe was destroyed. Japan was destroyed. And then what happened in the 80s?
Okay,
you guys had been rebuilt.
Okay, two things then. Firstly, you're quite right. Europe was not in a good place. Good thing the welfare state was there then to get things back together, and it wasn't just left to some scumbag capitalists to basically profit off it all. We in Europe enjoy many things that you don't have in America because of our welfare states being very big. Conversely, America could have gone that path because you had the resources.
You have shittier versions of what we have.
We have things people can access, Dave. People can't afford your healthcare. Your trains don't operate. They can't, Dave. Okay, they can.
People don't have health insurance.
People do not have health insurance. They can't afford it, Dave.
Even if they do, they have things called Medicredit and blah, 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 which charges 0.5% interest.
Like the programs in place like Medicare and stuff.
No, Medicredit.
Okay. You've got things in America.
It is a special credit program. I don't know who the fuck set it up. But it's Medcredit, and basically it charges a 0.5% interest rate, and it covers any sort of deductible, and basically you just pay it back over time if you can afford it. Again, get good insurance.
Going into debt. That's going into debt. You have to pay it back. Like, people can't, taking out a loan to be able to afford something isn't a fix. That's bad because you're putting someone into debt for something they need to stay alive. That's awful. That's
at a
not
0.5% interest rate. No, that's charity.
Better than many insurance things, but still bad and still not enough to keep people having a good life, right?
And
if people weren't having to worry about this, they could be doing more.
The system you advocate for is bad. The other big problem is people just spend all their fucking money.
They don't have, Dave. That's not true. Like, people don't. I don't quite get, right? Obviously, you have a different life to a lot of people, right? You said quite a few times that you have this great insurance and you've got this employer giving you raises and all of that, right? That is not the reality of millions of people in America.
Get a better job.
That's okay. Let me finish what I'm saying there, and we'll talk about, if you want to switch their job like that, that's not the reality of what's going on.
Yes,
right?
It is, because I live in Minnesota, which is considered a flyover state.
Minnesota, by the way, is
every fucking business has help wanted signs. I could quit my job today, this afternoon, and have a job before the evening.
Great. A lot of people don't live in Minnesota. Your state, by the way, is a state ran by Democrats who are more left-wing than Republicans, who put in place things which are, whilst I will say not the ideal version of what we want, are things that are far to the left of many of your Republican people that you would support, right? And as a result, your state's better to live in.
Most of the state is red. It's just
Okay,
Minneapolis and St. Paul.
Yeah. Okay. Great. You have more blue voters. You have a blue Democrat.
Maybe not
person in charge of the
anymore
state.
because Walz is fucking up royally.
Cool.
But the reason
you have Democrats in charge, your state's
the reason
better.
people leave Minnesota is okay. The number one reason, I'll be honest, is the winters. Our winters are fucking brutal. But the other reason is the taxes, and Minnesota is incredibly anti-business. We are the worst state to start a business in.
Okay.
Because of taxes.
We're talking just for a second about like workers being able to live, right? Your state is better for people to live in. Just the average person has a better time living in Minnesota than say Alabama, Tennessee, Mississippi, because it is more left-wing, it does more for its people, it looks after people more than right-wing states, or more right-wing states.
Alabama, Tennessee, and Mississippi, I get to keep more of my paycheck. Why should I be forced to give? Why should I be forced to be charitable at the barrel of the government gun?
Dave, who's forcing you? You're
the
not the
government
being
through taxes.
Okay. The point of our system is to look at where the majority of wealth and resource is, right? Which is the capitalist, the biggest thing. So we're not like you always talk about barrel of the gun. What happens, by the way, to those workers if they don't pay their bills? What's going to happen?
If they what?
If they you always talk about the barrel of a gun. Like people do not care really about. It's like it sounds harsh to say, I don't care about you, but you're not the person that's that fussed about, right? We're talking about the massive structures above that. The multinational corporation which keeps billions for its stock shareholders, whilst the workers but get pennies.
You mean
right?
If I don't pay my taxes, I go to jail?
Okay,
that's the barrel of the government gun.
So that system, Dave, paying tax, putting resources back into society, is essentially a truth.
But
right?
I don't want to pay that.
Okay, you are in society.
Do you know why I oppose free school lunches? It's twofold. A, I don't really care about the message, or I don't care about the money. I care about the message, which is rely on Big Daddy government. But two, they're not my fucking kids. Why do I have to pay for them?
Okay, Dave. When you drive on a road, who's made that road? When you go into a building, who's built the building?
I'm fine with paying for roads because we all need them. As for when I walk into a building, private capital built the building.
Workers did, Dave. Workers built it. Private
paid for at an agreed wage by private capital.
They had the money to begin with.
You are aware that work is voluntary. Unlike communist socialist systems where you are assigned a job.
We're going back to that in a second. The kids, Dave, who are in these schools now are going to be people looking after you when you're older and you haven't got the when you're too old to be able to work.
I'm not going to fucking live that long.
What?
I'm not going to live that long. Nor do I have any desire to.
Well, you should want to stay alive, right, and keep going. But
what's the point of being? Look at Jimmy Carter. He's almost 100, but he's been a corpse for the last 2 years.
He's still alive. He still has thoughts. He still matters.
God, no. Boy, lie around in bed all day.
Dave, okay, you benefit from the labor of everyone around you, right? The society we live in, everyone's connected. We're all together, right? We all, be it through the things we use, be it through the ways we get around, even through just who we interact with, right? It's all together. The kids, firstly, matter because they're living human beings and therefore have value. But secondly, are going to be responsible for maintaining that society in the future. Yeah. And so it's for a betterment of society and of a moral standing to have them not having to go into school thinking, oh my goodness, I can't eat today because we're out of credit on our school lunch bill. It's disgusting.
Well, what about mom making a fucking brown bag lunch?
Okay, again,
Moms
the failure
used to do
of the
that
capitalist
in my day.
system. Because people had more money, Dave. Because the society you lived in when you were growing up was in a healthier state in many ways.
For Christ's sakes,
wealthier
a pack
than
of
it is now.
bologna is $3. Bread is $3. American cheese is $3. $9. And your kid has sandwiches for over a week.
Right. Firstly, the benefits and wealth, like the what's it called, food stamps stuff are cut all the time. You'd be surprised how little you actually get when you're on those systems. Secondly, it's not as easy as like a simple mathematic algebra thing. It's not like, oh, I have X, this costs Y, how much can I do? There are things that come up, there are bills to pay. Like if you, let's say you break your pair of shoes, you need to buy a pair of shoes. Suddenly some of that money's now gone. Yeah. It's not as easy as just like a maths question in a test. You actually have lots of things happening. Also, if you're working all the time, all day, you come home, you're tired, you haven't necessarily, like, obviously it's not great that this is happening, but that's the reality of a system that works people to an early death, right? An early grave.
You can't take the 15 seconds it takes to make a sandwich. Wake up 5 minutes earlier and you can get your kids' lunches.
A lot of parents also start work before their kids are up, by the way. But also, it ignores the main point, which is that people should not have to live in a bad system like this. Kids shouldn't starve no matter what. So
no
the fact
kids
that
are starving in America.
Yes, they are. Dave.
No,
yes,
they are not. Have you seen
Dave.
poor kids? Most of them are quite fat.
Okay. The nutrition
the only way that kids are starving in my damn country are if it's is one reason: parental neglect.
But I want to come back to parental neglect in a second, actually. But that's not true. Plenty of people do not have the food to eat. It isn't, Dave. Come on.
You can be homeless and you can find a sandwich.
Dave.
There is free food everywhere in this country.
No, there isn't, Dave.
And the generosity of the American people, usually if we do see somebody that is down on their luck, most Americans will buy the guy of their own free will the sandwich.
Dave,
My problem is not buying the homeless guy a sandwich. My problem is being forced to buy the guy a sandwich.
Dave, no one's forcing you to buy someone a sandwich.
They are through taking my money through taxes.
Again, Dave, the corporations are the main target. Like the average person in a socialist society isn't going to be like hounded by the tax man. The changing way that production happens is what is going to free up all resources.
Raising taxes on anyone that makes $400,000 US will target damn near every single fucking small business owner on the planet. Or at least in America. I take that back. I want to be clear. In America. On paper, your average small business owner is making $500,000 to $3 million a year. If not into the billions.
Okay.
Because
the capitalist economy that we're in is controlled primarily by the people with most money, the billionaires, billion-dollar corporations, all of that.
You can be a billionaire and still be a small business owner.
Changing the conditions of this society.
Do you know what constitutes a small business?
Dave, let me finish my point quickly, right? If you change the society to allow more democracy, to end even just changing it a little bit, to have billionaires paying more tax, that changes the way that distribution happens, right? That changes the amount of money they control, the resources they control. That has an effect on how much food, electricity, all those things cost, which then brings costs down for the average person, which allows people to have more of a spending power because they're less outgunned by the billionaires as such. And so it makes it easier for smaller businesses to thrive. Like, just thinking about what you're saying, Dave, just saying, oh, I don't like paying tax. That right-wing argument is what billionaires use to avoid putting any money back into society and controlling their power. Now, going back to free school, school lunch debt, you, Dave, you benefit, all of us benefit from the next generation existing, no matter who they are, in a healthy manner. More to the point, they benefit from being fed. There's no food is a human right. Everyone needs food. So for a system to say
food is a human right if you grow it yourself. Food is not a human right if you need a farmer to grow it, a plant to process it, or whatever.
Dave, we live in a society beyond feudal Britain. We're not in caveman times. Production is distributed and spread out. We don't need all those. You don't
have the right to somebody else's labor, and that's the crux of socialism.
Cool. Tell that to the capitalists, Dave. Tell that to the capitalists in the mines in Congo, the iPhone stores.
Oh my God! I don't care. I don't care about the fucking Congo. Then go get on a plane and lead a fucking revolution, Owen.
You're saying Dave. You're saying you don't have a right to someone else's labor. That's exactly why we criticize capitalism, Dave. That's what we're talking about when we say
capitalists pay for the labor.
Who's getting paid in those mines, Dave? How are they getting into that
I
situation?
do not know, nor do I care
Then
about
okay,
the
then what are we saying
Congo.
then, Dave?
If you
That's
want
how
to change the
that's how it's
Congo,
fair
Owen,
enough.
get on a plane and lead a revolution. I
As we discussed
cannot
last
affect
time,
the
Dave.
Congo one way or the other. All I do know is
Dave.
every time that I have participated in the capitalist system, I have been justly rewarded. I got the money that was agreed, that I got the price that I agreed to for my labor.
Okay, right. You have already said that you work for some massive corporation, right?
I do.
So, okay, you're not making massive I mean, yeah, sure, you've got some money coming in, right? But your salary is not about whoever's at the top, right? So already there's a
Well,
power
my
imbalance,
responsibilities
right?
are completely different. I'm not the one at the head of a worldwide corporation.
But the person at the head of these corporations relies on the other people's labor. You just said yourself, you don't have the right to someone else's labor.
But the head of the
Yet,
corporation,
here we go,
the
Dave.
corporation pays me the money that I voluntarily agreed to.
But you have to
Or the
pay
hourly
your
wage
bills,
that I
Dave.
agreed to.
You have to be able to afford your insurance. You said yourself to pay for your insurance.
I can leave any time. I can literally quit the second I hang up the phone with you.
And get another job that has similar rates of pay. Like, you're not gonna say to a capitalist, Dave.
And then I can leave that job and go to a job that pays me more. Right now in America, job hopping for more money is common.
You're denying the reality of the average person, Dave, again.
No,
however,
I'm not. The average reality is
Dave,
people job hop all the fucking time. The days of the
Job
1950s
hopping.
where you get a job and you work said job for 30, 40 years at the same company are long dead. I will leave my company tomorrow if another company says, we'll pay you $1 more an hour. I'm gone. I work for money. I don't work for anything else.
Dave, who can afford, decent insurance, right? So from that fact alone, if that fact is true, you are not in the same situation as millions of Americans who, despite contributing massively to it on a different pay bracket, they're not able to just switch jobs. They've got things coming in. You, for instance, don't have. Again, I don't want to pry into your personal life, but you clearly don't have children because you wouldn't say the things you've just said about free school meals if you had kids.
No, I'd pay for my kids' meals.
Okay, we've already established that you're wealthier than, like, if what you're saying is true, you've got more money than a lot of people in America, right?
Yeah,
they
because
rely on social.
Yeah, because of the choices that I make versus the choices that they make.
Well, that's not
true. At the end of the day, if you're financially struggling, 99% of the time, it's the choices that you make.
It's just a lie, Dave. I mean, you've already said yourself.
Really?
Like,
because I've actually sat there and I could save a lot of money if I cut out all my frivolous spending.
Dave, when you say frivolous as well, by the way, like, do you think it's quite bad that a capitalist system makes you choose between things you enjoy and not like some yacht or anything, just like little things that are part of the enjoyment of life, and like eating, having a warm. You said yourself, right? Minnesota gets cold, so you want to heat your home, probably, right? Or you want to have some source of like. Yeah, exactly. So that's a thing people have to choose between in many, many places
because
in
they're
capitalist countries. That's not true, Dave.
They're more no.
Okay, right. Dave.
If your job is not paying you what you need to live, it is not the employer's responsibility to make sure you have enough to comfortably live. It is not society's job to make sure you have enough to comfortably live. It is your job to make sure you have enough to live, and that means time to find another fucking job.
Okay.
Furthermore, we do have a bit of socialism, and it is illegal in Minnesota to cut the heat off during the winter.
Fantastic.
Finally,
it's not socialism,
most people are absolute idiots. And when they actually get their finances break down, there's a guy named Caleb Hammer. You should watch him. You'll find these people are like, why did you spend $300 on food, on takeout food? Oh, well, those are lunches for work. Have you heard of a fucking sandwich?
Dave, Okay, so there's a big point there.
Brown bag it.
Firstly, people need the reason people eat takeaways and stuff. Lots of poor people eat takeaways, but it isn't actually always true. The reason a lot of people do is because quick food that's easy to prepare and is hot is very, very filling, which is what you need to get through long working days, which lots of people have.
Spaghetti takes fucking 15 minutes.
It's still time that's much, much more strenuous to do. And as well,
God.
Dave,
four servings of spaghetti costs.
Yep.
Fucking, I'll throw in the pound of sausage, $13 versus ordering it, which will cost $40.
You would be very, very surprised, Dave, how much time it feels like it takes to make a lot of meals, especially if you're working a long day and you're there all day.
Do you not get days off meal prep?
Okay.
Freeze it.
That's not, Dave. If you're working somewhere that's outdoors, or you're working somewhere that's not just immediate, you haven't got access to it, it's not as easy always to get to it. Sometimes you want just a quick hot meal.
You might actually have to fucking work.
Dave, they are working, Dave, working for hours, producing the wealth that makes this country
Yeah, and then you have to work for 15 minutes when you're at home to make dinner. Drink a couple of beers and suck it up.
Beers are not a good thing to add to your diet, Dave, if you're trying to work long days. Beer's not good for you. Now, it's depressing. Now, let's get back to what we were saying a second ago.
I work all fucking day, all the fucking time, and I drink. So I don't know what people's problems are.
It's a depressant, Dave. It's not good to consume lots of beer, especially if you're working with, like, not everyone also has the same level of tolerance that people do. Like, it's not healthy. Ruins your liver. It's not good. For like a long term, like not to be drinking as like a regular thing, right? Anyway, what was I saying?
Well, your greatest prime minister, Winston Churchill, drank all the time, and he did all right.
Our greatest prime minister was one who came after him, Clement Attlee, who made the welfare state, Dave. Winston, whilst a very good public speaker, was voted out quite quickly because people did not want a conservative government after the war.
And if Neville Chamberlain had done what he was supposed to, we wouldn't have had World War II. But,
Neville Chamberlain, I'm not defending him, but my point was that Winston Churchill wasn't our best prime minister. Anyway, you made a point yourself that the state had to come and step in because, if you don't have protections on heat levels and things like that, then corporations do not care. They'll use it as a way of charging people. A society like that is not good. It's not good to have people fretting about how they're going to eat, how they're going to be warm. That isn't a society that lets things progress. You want progress, right? Progress comes when people in society work together. We don't live in the wild. We're not like wild animals that need to fight each other and need to.
And food stamps provide more than enough food.
They don't, Dave.
Yes, they fucking do.
Food stamps are constantly targeted by right-wing parties because they're seen as just extra money to be pocketed by capitalists, right? Cut that, and then you get more money to hand over to Corporation X to, buy another yacht, basically. They are not good to live on. That's why people have poor. That's why lots of poor people have bad diets.
The maximum amount of a family of 4 in Minnesota is $1,000. That's $250 a week. That is more than enough for a wife, a husband, and let's be honest, it's more like a mom and 3 kids. But it's more than enough for a wife, a husband, and 2 kids.
Right. Again, Dave. Firstly, it's bad, but it has to happen in the first place. It's a failing of the overall system. Minnesota is a state that is more left-wing than most states, hence it being better than Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, any other horrible red state you can think of. That's not how much most people get. Lots of states do not have that. Our benefit system in our country, for instance, has been eviscerated by the Tories to the point that people have to choose, lots of poor families have to choose between heating their homes and affording food. Yeah? Lots of the policies in place. How cold does it get
in England?
It can get really cold. It can get sub-zero quite a lot. Sub-zero. Okay. And it can be between 0 and 10. Crucially, though, Dave, well below room temperature. If it's rainy and wet, it's going to be colder too.
Keep in mind, I'm on the Fahrenheit scale, so about 32-ish. Because you're not going to...
Yes.
You're not going to freeze to death at 32.
Oh, Dave, come on. If your home is 0 degrees, Dave, it's not good to live in. Are you kidding?
Yeah. Burn some butane burners.
And where are you getting the money for that? How can you can't just put one of them in your house, Dave? 0 degrees is not good to live in. People need heated homes. People need homes, by the way, that are built decently and not shabby. That's another thing as well. Private landlords, having landlords and stuff, and private ownership of just tons of properties.
You shit on landlords.
To do this.
You know that landlords are responsible for all the damage and all the maintenance.
Yes, because the system is set up. The system's set up for them to be in charge, Dave. It's a silly argument. It's like saying, "Oh, the king's in charge of looking after his people." Well, of course, because he's the king. He's put himself in charge.
And if he doesn't, you can legally withhold rent. At least in my country.
Okay, that's not. It's not. People get evicted all the time, Dave. As we are clearly establishing,
people get evicted all the time, and
yes,
it takes
because
2 years to do it.
That is not always the case.
In my country,
that is not the case in lots of places. Dave, that isn't true.
There are professional tenants. They literally go from place to place to place. They will rent an apartment. They will not pay rent. They will drag conspiracy theory, no,
Dave.
This is not. They will
drag
the eviction process out, and then halfway through the eviction process, they will declare bankruptcy and drag that position out because it's illegal to evict people that have declared bankruptcy.
Right. That is not the case for the majority of America. Whatever, I don't know, Judge Judy story you're pulling up, this isn't a reality of most people's situation. I'll give you an example.
Story. It's a story of a new landlord that was trying to get tenants that weren't paying rent
crucially
out of his fucking property.
Crucially, Dave, as well, everyone should have rights to a home.
And he is still on the hook for all the property taxes and maintenance.
Because the system's in place, Dave. Also, if you want if you want a system where you say, "Oh yes, I'm in charge of all your homes and I'm in charge of where you live," then yes, we need to have a system that puts that person in charge of making it livable. Of course, that's going to be in place. The overall point, though, is that shouldn't be how it should be organized. People should be able to have control over their living and shouldn't be sending off money for someone to be making money off someone else's place of living.
Yeah, because they make their place livable. They make their place
you're missing the overall point, Dave. Okay, if one day
it's called buying a house.
Okay, Dave, if you woke up and suddenly, this is a hypothetical, it's a thought experiment. Suddenly, the course history's been changed. America is still part of the British Empire. We're still an absolute monarchy. King comes to your house. He's right, Dave, I'm in charge here. And you're like, oh, okay. Where we're going to live, and the king says, right, okay, I've put some things in place for you. I've given you a bed, I've given you this meeting and stuff. And then one day that breaks, and you're thinking oh, this is such a rubbish system. And the king says, oh, well, I'm in charge. I have so much responsibility. I've got to look after you so much. I've got to basically have this home for you. Would you be thinking, oh yeah, the king's actually a pretty good guy?
Well, or would you be thinking someone else? In this scenario, I guess I can call God, which is the government in this scenario, and say, hey, my landlord is fucking me over, and God will come deal with it.
Okay, the government, Dave, in this scenario is a Republican government that are paid, they are voted for by said landlords, and they're landlords, wealthy corporations that buy up these properties, basically write the laws, and they say that these aren't protected things. But like you said, buy a burner.
Well,
deal with it, get another job.
I don't rent. So there's that.
Okay, well, this is why it's a hypothetical there. That's why I said it's a thought experiment. And also, the government is not it's not a straight comparison, right? Because the government, whilst it the government is a mechanism for which things are done, right? Policies are enacted through government. The government sometimes, and a lot of the time in this case,
I have to take a piss. I'll be right back.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what. I'll read the chat for a second. I'll wait for you to come back. I'll have a look at what's being said here for a moment. And who's watching and stuff. I think it's so important because clearly Dave has a place of position, right? He clearly his life, if he's telling the truth, because he knows, right, if all things he said is true, he's had a lot of things go right for him, right? If all things he's saying is correct. This is not the case for a lot of people. I think it's quite ironic actually that he's so critical of of left-wing policies and stuff, or left-leaning policies, and he lives in Minnesota, which is done so much that would be more aligned with left-wing ideals. There's no way he'd be enjoying himself as much if he was living in one of these like really red states. Like he's talking about, oh yes, well, I have to pay less tax, and he'd also be living in a state with much worse infrastructure, much worse just like existence in some horrid place. By the way, to people who are mentioned like PRWT Falcon 6 and stuff, with your generic quote, I'm happy to talk to any of you in the chat about these issues and stuff. I'm open to conversation. I'm happy to discuss any of these things with those of you who are sort of critical of what I'm saying. Send me a DM on Twitter, message me, whatever. We'll organise something. I'm open to conversation. It's part of my studies. I'm looking forward to broadening such chats. Anyhow, it's telling that all the areas of life that are decent are left-wing organised. Every single thing, like without fail.
Except for the beauty of capitalism.
Yeah, but what beauty, Dave? I mean, come on. Is those mines in the Congo?
It's only given us this entire world.
Well, if I ask the guys who made
hold on. Without capitalism, Owen, you wouldn't have the nice house or apartment or whatever you're in. You wouldn't have your sweatshirt. We wouldn't be talking right now. We wouldn't have the medium of YouTube anymore in the first place. We wouldn't have the internet. We wouldn't have computers. We wouldn't have the headphones, the microphones, the cords, the cables, and all this other shit. Capitalism has literally built our modern Western world, and again, you seem to fight against it for some reason that is absolutely eluding me.
Workers built the world, Dave. Workers
who were paid by the people who thought they shit up.
That society is organized by capitalists. Does not equal capitalism building society. Dave.
Then why did... You're way too young for this, but then why did every single Nintendo, original Nintendo game come from the West except one? And that was Tetris.
Which ironically did outsell quite a lot of it. But
yes, Tetris was... But here's the other thing.
Okay.
The guy who created Tetris, who programmed it by himself, was never compensated. The government took it, sold it, and kept all the money. How the fuck is that fair?
Okay. To make a video game, you need things that are rare metals, right? They come from the earth. They are produced, they are collected by workers. They are therefore involved in the production of your game. Like before you even get to, like if you had this,
like were already paid.
They were
a goddamn
paid at the barrel of a gun.
Thing. How is it fair that he was not paid a nickel in royalties?
Right. Okay. Like the creation of the game Tetris in Soviet Russia, isn't a contradiction to what we're saying here, Dave. Nintendo games, right? They take place on computers, on tablets, consoles, whatever. To make them, you need so much labor to go into it before we even get to the point of the game. Also, said person who makes this game has benefited from a lot of things just in their life before we even get to that point, right? People educated them, taught them how to read. They benefited from help from being around healthcare and modern living standards and roads and all the things that went into their life before the point where they said, right, I'm going to pick up Mario.
That's the same bullshit argument that Barack Obama gave years ago and it got mocked.
Dave, it's not bullshit, is it? You are a product of all that's come before you. So am I, so is everyone. No one is
isolated. I am the product of what I made myself.
You were made by other people, Dave.
No, I was
You were made
not.
and influenced by other people. How have you learned to exist then, Dave? How have you learned to read and write and walk and do maths and all of that?
Okay.
Did it just come to you one day?
I know how to read. Dave. I know how to read and write because I chose to learn.
Oh God.
No, it all comes down. A teacher who was compensated for the time she took to teach
paid
me to
state
learn
rate,
and write.
which isn't enough. Even so, Dave, even ignoring that argument, which is not good, but we'll ignore it for a second.
But here's the thing. Here's the thing. I could have chosen just to do nothing with my life and sit around and watch TV all day.
Great. That doesn't change the circumstances
but socialism would say that I still somehow deserve an apartment, a television, and
Yes,
food.
yes. Every living person deserves a place of shelter.
Not
and
if they're
food,
willing
Dave.
to work. If you do not
What?
work,
Who
you do
defines
not
what's
earn.
willing to work, Dave? Rubbish. You are deserving of
Bullshit.
life, regardless of what, Dave. Dave.
If you do
Human
not
life
work,
is valuable,
you do
Dave.
not eat.
What's work? What's you can't. In
Well,
a
okay,
world,
let's go with growing the only food I believe you do have a right to. Food you grow yourself. You planted the seed or seedlings. You
utter
cared
rubbish,
for
Dave.
them.
It's a
You
human
nurtured
right.
them.
In a
No,
society,
it's not.
it is, Dave. It's a human right.
Really? So the farmers just
Yes.
gonna work for free out of some semblance
The
of
farmers are not working
Mother
for free. They
Teresa?
are also part of the world as well, Dave. But
Who
let's
pays
think
them?
about, Dave. Most
If food
like
is
corporations, Dave,
free, which is I'm assuming what you're going with, grocery stores should just give everything
no one's
away.
like, okay, I think part of the issue, Dave, is that you imagine that socialists just take over where the capitalists left off and keep the exact same system the same, and we have the exact same like grocer at the
Okay,
grocery
then
store.
how does food get distributed
Right.
in your ideal
Okay.
world?
The majority of land and resources is privately owned. Corporations buy up tons of land, often in like rainforests too, by the way, which is why we say that ending capitalism is crucial for saving the climate. They tear down the rainforest, the corporations in control, they hire cheap local labor, don't pay them very often and very much.
Okay,
And then
you're not
they've got
answering
billions.
my question. You're
Dave,
going
I'm getting
into
to
words.
it, Dave.
No, I don't want the
Not word
fucking
salad.
prologue.
Dave, life is more complicated than a
How
quick
would
answer.
food be distributed in your world? Skip the
Dave.
goddamn prologue. Just answer the question.
Right. Distributed in a similar way, but with worker democracy at the heart of it. So there's still people and machines and stuff put to use to be able to help make this stuff. But instead of like the capitalists coming and taking the majority of the proceeds of it and letting food like rot and stuff, because that happens like en masse basically, because it can't sell, it's publicly available. But like for instance, if you go to your Tesco, Tesco, if you go to your shop, the food there is available.
So let's take
used,
beef.
utilized.
Let's take beef.
Beef.
Under this socialized food system where beef is a human right, who gets the ribeyes and who gets the eye of rounds?
I
or do
don't
we have a
care
lottery
who's
system?
Right. Okay. Beef, Dave, is what like people have different tastes. Taste is cultivated through like the reason some things.
The reason
Dave,
ribeye commands a much larger price than the eye of round, a ribeye steak versus an eye of round steak, is because the ribeye steak tastes 1,000% better. That's why it is
entirely subjective
much
opinion,
more
Dave.
in demand than the eye of round.
Lots of the market forces, Dave, are entirely like fabricated and intent. Like for instance, the cultural value of a diamond is really high, and so they cost loads. But what's the functional use of having like a pretty ring on your finger? Right? It's cultural.
No, it's not. It's because
yes, it is.
No, it's
what
because
are you gonna do,
clear diamonds are exceptionally rare.
Okay, but what's the functional value apart from it's rare?
Diamonds are actually pretty common and relatively cheap, but they're yellow, which nobody wants.
Okay, like if you go to your jeweler and you buy a nice ruby for thousands of pounds, that isn't something which is other than culturally valuable.
And also the
actually
reason
relevant to your life.
the reason diamonds are artificially expensive is a lot of them come from South Africa, which has a form of capitalism that I do not agree with, and that's monopolies.
Monopolies are inevitable in capitalism because, Dave, you have capitalists who have
not.
lots and lots. They are okay. If you're a capitalist, you want to make more money. Mm-hmm. It's in your interest to stop other people making the money so that you can make more of it. So you put things in place to get yourself into power. And the interventions of states to make that easier.
As long as the government doesn't stop new startups, as long as they have a better product, they are going to grow.
Dave, I have $1 billion. Okay, hypothetical again. I have $1 billion. I'm enjoying making my whatever at a factory, my Owen phones. All of a sudden, some new people show up and they want to make some phones. They've got some money as well. However, my $1 billion is going to go to good use. I've now lobbied all people in Parliament in a certain party
I
to
said
say
keep
no.
the government out of it.
Okay,
I
but
specifically
governments
said
exist, Dave.
that.
So what? Just just capitalism is like with no like a stateless society of just capitalists, just like oligarchies and like what are you talking about?
No,
then,
I'd
Dave?
be fine with the government saying no monopolies. I also,
It's not. They don't form through choice, Dave.
if the government isn't in the pocket of said monopoly, eventually somebody is going to create something better.
What do you
might
expect?
be too young to remember this, but at one point, the dominant social media platform, and it was like 100% of the traffic, was this website called MySpace. Now that is deader than a fucking dodo bird.
Right, Dave. That's my hypothetical.
Well,
I've got $1 billion.
Capitalism. Facebook offered a better product. YouTube offered better video service. Instagram offered better picture service.
Yeah, one of a handful of very wealthy corporations have, basically these websites, which get dominated.
Facebook was started in a basement. YouTube was started in a basement.
They were still wealthy, Dave.
No,
they
weren't.
They were.
And I don't know
Dave,
where the fuck Instagram was started.
They were at Harvard. Like, or was it Harvard? It was one of the massive universities. Anyway, I've back to hypothetical. Monopolies, Dave, happen, or capitalist control happens in government because they use their money to put things like they interact with the society that exists to make more money. They use their billions to have a look at the government and say, right, how can I use my money? How can I use my capital to make things better?
Gee,
and so you're saying,
maybe the government, outside of being a referee, maybe they should say the fuck out of private business.
Okay, but do you see why that doesn't happen, Dave? Because people in a society controlled by billionaires will interact with things in society, like housing,
society
food, all that
isn't controlled
stuff.
by billionaires.
So, yes, it is, Dave.
Oh my God! If it was, then how the fuck did Joe Biden win?
When I say controlled, I don't mean
how
like
did
literally
Bernie Sanders get within a fucking ass hair of the presidency?
Right. When I say controlled, I don't mean literally they're sat in a room pressing buttons and like making things happen. I mean the market forces that preside over the world, the capitalist system we all interact with and have to engage with, is dominated by people who have more money. Yeah. So the control is seen through market forces.
Then why is any left-wing person elected ever?
Okay, well, we've already established, Dave.
What I would call ultra left-wing government has been in power for goddamn ever. You guys need
the Democrats, ultra left-wing. Are you kidding? Anyway, Dave,
why was Bernie Sanders not once but twice, and Barack Obama not once but twice? Why was Bernie Sanders almost within an ass hair of the presidency?
Okay.
And Barack Obama was elected not once but twice.
Okay, firstly, we are still a democracy. There's still people who vote, and there's more people who aren't billionaires than are. Secondly, those right-wing parties are awful and suck and constantly crash for everything, and that's why they get elected. Thirdly, and most importantly, Dave, they are not actually that left. Like, they're not socialists advocating for the end of capitalism. They're still operating within the system, and so they're not. Like, I mean, Bernie Sanders,
it's just because what you advocate for is against human nature.
It's not.
And capitalism is human nature.
It isn't, Dave. Bernie Sanders.
We're all inherently greedy.
Lots of people in their party,
inherently greedy.
We'll come on to why that's wrong in a second. But Bernie Sanders and Jeremy Corbyn in the UK and lots of left-wing politicians who try and want more change in what we get are shut out by the mechanisms in the system because money talks.
Bullshit. Bernie Sanders was not shut out. Bernie Sanders just couldn't win.
Bernie Sanders faced a lot of internal resistance from the mechanisms of the Democrat Party because they are a party that operates.
Even Kyle Kulinski said accidentally spilled the beans on Bernie Sanders.
Yeah, of course, there's other factors as well, Dave. There's other factors too.
Yeah.
But one of the large ones.
And by the way, I was pulling for Bernie Sanders as well in the last election because Trump would have crushed him.
So, I find it very ironic that you live in a state that's benefited massively from you said yourself, right? The state stops corporations freezing it's cutting off the heat.
Well, the only way you get the only way. Well, no, but I also don't like it because it's not a private business.
Why are you joking? Like,
because the only way you get the only way you get the license is to go through the state. I don't like that either.
It's good to have a central, but like in the system you've created of capitalism, you need to have regulations for capitalists. Otherwise, they turn society into a dump. As we see with, for instance, in the UK, we have private ownership of water, and as a result, our waterways are wrecked. There's absolutely filthy rivers all across the UK since we privatized water. Our trains are privatized. Our train lines don't run on time. They don't have services that function or even run sometimes. They're often old and slow. And we have slower trains than like all of Europe and Japan. And yeah, we would have America, but yours are even worse. We have
because trains don't work in America.
But yes, they do. What do you mean they don't work?
We're a car nation. We're too big for a train.
You're a car nation because capitalists have put the money into cars.
We're a car nation because we're too fucking big.
What are you talking about? You're a market country. The industry, cars, use their capital. We were talking about this earlier. Use their capital to shape the society around their form of spending. Dave.
How long? Let me ask you this: how long does it take for you to drive from the thickest point in the UK? Actually, how long would it take? How long would it take for you to get to London to Glasgow, Scotland?
Well, on car versus train, it's quicker via the train. It would be even quicker if if you had better train infrastructure.
How long?
And how long would it take me to get to London to Glasgow? Let's guess like 7-8 hours by train.
Okay,
probably
8 hours
much
by train.
Longer.
8 hours by train. I'll go, let's say, 10 hours by car. Do you know how long it takes?
Quicker. 5 hours I can get there. I forgot there's more than one line.
Okay, 5 hours. That is literally the trip from Minneapolis, Minnesota to Waterloo, Iowa, the next state below me. To get from LA to New York, and you're going to drive it, takes 4 days.
Yeah,
that's
America's
how much
a big country,
larger
Dave.
my country is.
Yes, I'm well aware that America's a big country. That's why trains would literally half the time you'd have less fatalities. Car crashes are a leading cause of death for people.
That's why trains don't work.
Why is that why trains don't work?
Well, if I'm going to go to California or New York, I'm in Minnesota.
Yeah.
I'm getting on a plane. I'm not going to drive the son of a bitch.
Okay, terrible for the environment for one, and for two, that's why trains.
Yeah, I don't live in a small island. I live in a massive country.
Yes, and we'd have trains to fix that issue if you invested it. If cars were, like you said yourself, you're a car society. There's an excellent video by a good person called Jacob Geller who explores how the domination of society by cars is really unhelpful and bad, and basically
we had a train line. We tore it down because of cars.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, Dave. If you actually invested in public transport,
I take that back. We tore it down once the invention of the plane happened.
Okay, trains, Dave, are good. They're good form of public transport. If you invest in them, they run quickly, cheaply, and they're less deadly. Yeah, you don't have as many car crashes as you do train crashes. A person driving a car can get tired.
Our country is still too fucking big.
Not if you invest in it, Dave.
Cars.
China does the same thing with their trains. They've got a big country too.
There is no way you can get from New York to LA in a day on a train, and I don't care.
Who said a day,
I don't care because
it's going to be faster than the cars.
It's 5 hours on a plane.
Yes, it's a big country, Dave. You're a very big country. It's it's almost
5 hours on a plane versus 2 days on a train.
Okay.
And I have shit to do. I don't want to spend 2 days traveling.
Okay, you've got a big country, Dave, so it's going to take time anyway. However, trains travel quicker. They will get even quicker if you invest in them. They're already quite quick, Dave. They're not a bad way to travel. And crucially, most importantly, they're faster than cars, more efficient than cars, and less deadly than cars. If you invested in them, much better system. And we're not just talking like cross-country travel. We're talking about like in the cities as well, and like around the state and stuff.
No, I always take my cars. I refuse to take public transport.
If you can drive, that's fantastic. However, trains lots of people don't have cars, can't afford them. Insurance costs a lot. Trains, public transport is much better for both the environment, for people, less air pollution, less space taken up by roads. You've got
sit in the thing smelling some homeless guy's urine.
Address homelessness rather than putting everything onto the homeless person. Let's address that issue as well. All of these things are connected, Dave. The world we live in can be better if we start caring about each other in society and thinking about things together. Also, your car.
Human beings don't give a shit about one another.
Yes, they do, Dave. You do, Dave. You do.
No, they don't.
Outside of this, I will say character.
No,
because
this is not of a side. Human beings. I'm not saying it's a facade, Dave. Care about each other.
You call yourself Lord of Patriarchy. You've got all these right-wing talking points, but if you actually boil it down, there is something there that cares about people.
Do you have a cell phone?
Yes, Dave, I have a phone.
Then you don't care about those poor assholes mining the crap in the Congo. You don't care about the Chinese workers. You don't care about this. You buy your stupid fucking little product.
Dave, nobody in society have to engage with production.
Everybody that whines and cries about ethical sourcing is a complete fucking hypocrite. You don't give a shit about who the fuck made it, how the fuck it was made. You just want it in your shopping basket.
There's the reason, Dave. We in society we have to buy things on a capitalist market, otherwise we die because the world is capitalist. It's the meme, isn't it?
It's like we should. The world is in the great shape that it's in.
We're going around in circles. It's the meme saying we should improve society, and the guys that you exist in society, you can't criticize it. It's silly. Unless you're saying everyone should just be docile, accept.
No, what I'm saying is, if you want to change the lives of the people of the Congo, then get on a plane and lead a revolution. Dave, but you're not going to do that.
Okay, Dave. I'm part of a wide left-wing existence in society that wants to change society for the better.
Society is pretty much sick of leftism.
I don't think Western that's true, Dave. I think if you actually have a look, Dave, I think people
There's a reason your country is turning right wing. There's a reason there's a reason Europe's turning right wing, and it's because of all the unfettered immigration.
So I think what you're doing is you're looking at elections and seeing that far right parties are growing in support. And that's true because in times of crisis, capitalists tend into fascism, the right goes into the far right, all that happens. However, firstly, voting does not show unanimous support. 20% of a country voting for a far right party is not everyone is now right wing. People support. Yes, our UK system is bad. America's system is atrocious. But in a capitalist system, people want things like healthcare.
No, your country should adopt an electoral college for the prime ministership.
The electoral college is one of the most undemocratic systems. You have one of the worst election systems.
No, it's not. World, every state gets a voice.
Your system.
Every state gets a voice.
Dave.
Why should Wyoming and most of the country be drowned out by Chicago?
How many? Dave, some of your states have barely anyone in it, right?
Yeah.
Compared to literal cities.
Yeah.
And yet those states get the same voting power as a massive
because we're the United States.
Dave, that isn't democratic, Dave. Literally, the system was set up. The system was set up to let slave owners control.
Well, we're not a democracy. We're a constitutional republic because democracy sucks.
Democracy
is the tyranny of the majority.
Oh my God, Dave.
I mean, the only reason we have gay marriage legal here in the United States is because we are a constitutional republic. If it was left up to the voters of the U.S., gay marriage would be repealed and outlawed about 60 to 40.
Not true.
Yes, true.
People support LGBTQ rights, Dave, quite overwhelmingly. But also, Dave,
not if you put it to a vote.
Okay, well, thankfully we don't vote on human rights. However, Dave, what you're exploring here, everyone should be able to exist in a society that gives them, if we're having marriage as an institution, then whether you're gay or straight, you should get it.
It's not a human right, though.
Anyway, Dave, the point you're making here, that what you're saying essentially is that your country is beset with discriminations and bigotries, which is why a lot of these things have to be like is why essentially right-wing states shouldn't be allowed to do what they like, right? It's why a state like Alabama shouldn't be allowed to, like have a system in place which lets it have the same, drown out the votes of millions of people in New York,
California,
Chicago, LA,
the
wherever.
bluest state in the goddamn
California.
union. California had Prop 8 and it passed, which outlawed gay marriage.
California is
until it was overturned by the Supreme Court.
Yes. However, Dave, California, one of the reasons America's quite wealthy, by the way, lots of stuff comes out of there, quite a wealthy place.
Not anymore.
Place with lots of left-leaning people there. Better to live there as well than in lots of states because of its left-wing, more left-wing, I should say, ideas.
And that's why California's going fucking broke.
I don't think it is, Dave.
Yes,
but again, the capitalist system's not sustainable. Everything's going to come to a crash eventually. People who criticize capitalism have said this for decades, centuries even. Marx said this himself. And lo and behold,
Marx was a fucking loser that allowed his children to starve to death.
I don't think that's quite true, Dave. But
that is true. That's true on the Wikipedia article, for Christ's sake.
If we're talking about the ideas that he had, then it's not relevant to bring up the fact
couldn't get a job, just wanted to live off of his buddy.
You don't quite have...
That is from the Wikipedia article.
We're not here to discuss the history of Karl Marx. We're here to discuss the capitalist structure, which fails every so often. You can't make profit forever. You can't just endlessly accumulate capital. That's why it crashes.
The only reason you have the life that you have, or the fact that if you were a danger baby, that we're both alive because of capitalism.
That's not true,
because it led to medical invention and innovation.
Dave.
Communism has created nothing. Socialism has created nothing. Name me the last 5 inventions socialism has created.
Okay, people create things. Systems manage how they're created, Dave. Like, the person in the factory is who made the phone, the computer, the tablet, whatever. It's the system around that which decides how that is
created what he was told to create. That's not invention, nor is that innovation.
Even, Dave, even if that were true, Dave, that's in place. We already established, but that's in place. That's the system in place. Like, for instance, let me try and think. Like, you wouldn't again. Let's go back to that old system. Like the king telling his peasants, or the lord telling the peasants to do this, isn't some genius like leader of men. They're in a system
agree.
That's set up
that's
for them.
why.
And so
that's
capitalism
why
is the same
capitalism
thing.
should have replaced feudalism.
Capitalism did replace feudalism.
Has got us literally within 100 years from the horse and cart to where we are right now.
Workers did that, Dave. Workers did that.
No, workers.
And it's only until left-wing things happening in society is what changed the society for the better, so that the produce that was being made could be made. The existence of the worker under capitalism was atrocious, and still is, but less so now, because of the creation of the welfare state, of worker regulations, of worker movements, of left-wing, or more left-wing rather, policies that were in place to help improve things and save things. I can't stress enough, Dave, but the reason we aren't like grueling away in some factory or some mine now is because someone fought and died for the right for us to be able to have education, drinking water, like rights to things in life. Can you not see that?
Yeah, can you not see those things were not granted to you by socialism nor communism?
By left-wing movements, Dave. So, like I've said already, the socialist/communist or whatever society, worker production, workers owning the world and stuff, that doesn't exist. We're in a capitalist world at the moment, Dave. That's the next step.
Workers' rights don't exist. I don't have the right to leave my job right now this afternoon and go get another one.
You say workers' rights don't exist?
No, I said workers' rights don't exist. I have the right now to leave my job and get another one. I can leave anytime I want.
That's still, Dave, that's a capitalist thing, isn't it? You're free to trade your labor under their conditions.
I am free to trade my labor for the agreed upon price.
Yeah, they agree, Dave. Okay. They say, here's the price I'm willing to pay you. If you say no, right, you can go and look somewhere else. Another person will offer a very similar wage, a similar set of conditions. What you also lose access to is the resource, the money you need to be able to afford things that same capitalist class also owns: food, a house, energy bills. All the elements of production are controlled by capitalists, and so the agreement is coerced.
And they're also
it's not a
paying
fair
for all
agreement.
those elements.
Dave, they're not paid fairly.
You as a worker are not paying for the factory to go burr.
What?
You, as a worker, are not paying the factory to go burr, aka run. You are not paying any of the business's bills. You are there to do a job for a set amount of time, get a wage that you voluntarily agreed to, and then go home.
Dave, if you don't agree to their terms, you die. You don't have money to live.
Then get another job.
For goodness sake, Dave, it's the same conditions at the other job. There's no if you're earning minimum wage at a job. This
is why workers in America got a lot better.
Because of left-wing movements, Dave. The history of the production line, Dave, is that of workers' struggle and
do you know why Henry Ford was so successful?
He's a capitalist with a lot of money, Dave.
He also agreed to pay his workers $5 an hour, which was an insanely high wage at the time.
Yeah, after strikes and worker movements.
No, before all that shit, long before unions.
And at the same time as that, you still needed the left-wing things elsewhere.
No, because he wanted a robot. He wanted his factory to run 24/7, and he knew, and he gave the night crew $1 surcharge.
The factories that they worked in were hellholes for workers until things were put in place to stop the capitalists just exploiting them to the extent they were.
Well, then people, okay, let's say they were hellholes.
Where would you have
gone? They actually weren't. But
they were.
You could have gotten another job at a non-hellhole factory.
Oh, come on! What
for less money?
Factory, Dave?
People just went with the money.
Because you need the money to survive, Dave. That's can you not see the
$5 an hour when Henry Ford was doing that was well above survival wages. Survival wages was about 50 cents an hour.
Dave, the factory life in cities where they're the main jobs, you need the reason that they had lots of people worked at them is because they were the big industry in town. That's where all the jobs were, most of them. They were what you need to afford the things that you have in life. That's where the jobs were. Yeah, it's not a choice that you can just choose to make. It's dictated by market forces, the same market forces that control food, rent, energy, all of that stuff. Every step in our capitalist world is influenced, sometimes very directly, by capitalists and their spending forces. There is no the choices that we make are influenced by things around us. There's no
I hate to bring this up because we're coming to the end of this.
We run out of time again.
Well, we've been going on for 2 hours.
So much I'd love to say.
I find this funny because you're a feminist, and so are capitalists. They loved it when women entered the workforce.
Okay.
Because it doubled the labor participation, which allowed them to keep wages a bit low.
Okay, so yes, I agree with the idea of breaking down and gender inequality and stuff, right?
Oh, great! So we agree, women should stay at home with kids.
So what the point is here is the reason it's important to be intersectional, and the reason that socialism is so important and anti-capitalist stuff is to look at the system in place. So in a system that you need to sell your labor to be able to live, of course, that shouldn't be if that's a condition that is in society, it shouldn't be the case that women can't go and get a job and stuff. What is being criticized though by socialists and left-wing people is the way that the way that people are working under capitalism, that we have to sell our labor to a capitalist in order to engage with the market and be able to afford anything, right? So if there is a system in place that forces people to sell this labor, that's what's being criticized. And at the same time, we're criticizing patriarchal forces that see women as the lesser of the of genders and make them
Well, they're not
stay in the house
lesser,
and
but
stuff.
their roles are different.
Okay, but those roles are not things that are like some truth of the universe. They're things people decide. People decide.
No, they
that
are
that's the
they
case.
are the truths of our gender. You're not going
There's
to
no
you're
gender
not
truth.
going to
Gender is a
you're not
social
going to trust a
construct.
female pilot. You're not going to
But, oh
trust
my God,
a
Dave.
male
Hey, do you know how to
kindergarten
fly a
teacher.
plane, Dave? Do you know how to fly a plane?
No, I don't. All
So
I
then
know
why
is
would you care?
all I know is if I see a woman getting into the pilot seats, I'm off the plane.
You're an idiot, Dave, if that's true, because you don't know how would you even know what they were doing? Because you don't know how to fly a plane. There's no gender difference between things that you can learn in society. Like humans exist.
Well,
right?
I also know
Humans
that
exist.
2 of the 3 major airlines said they're just going to hire women not based on qualifications.
I don't
Just
think
because of
that
the fact they have a cunt.
I don't. Lovely.
Well,
I
you're
don't
the
think
one pushing DEI.
so. There's several statements just in a row that are just nonsense, right? You've got okay.
Oh, say
The
so
fact
you
that
don't
you don't know how
you
to fly a
don't
plane, Dave,
support
right?
DEI then.
So okay. What I support, Dave, is a breakdown of all the societal structures which are unjust. So that is racism, sexism, anti-LGBTQ, all of that. Right?
You're never going to get rid of that.
Well, we can aim for that, Dave. I like to
You
believe
can
that
aim
one day
for
we
it,
will.
but I can aim for building a
Gender,
warp drive, but it
Dave,
doesn't mean it's going to happen.
Gender is a social construct. Like, I think it's ironic actually, because are you an atheist?
Gender is not
Dave?
a social construct.
Dave, are you an atheist? Are you an atheist?
Yes, I am an atheist.
Okay, so the fact that we have men and women as like the 2 big groups, right, is in part influenced by the Adam and Eve story from the Bible, right? God made man and then he made woman. That's why you've got this big societal push for years and years.
What influences that.
Yep. Now,
for me,
obviously, we are a bimodal species. We're sexually dimorphic. We have means of procreation, but they're not.
No,
they're things that exist.
There are clear distinctions in nature
Dave.
between males and females.
There are distinctions between people, with
clear distinctions,
egg cells.
However,
gender
is not a fucking construct.
It is, Dave, because it's not something.
No, it's not. It's hardwired shit.
It's not hardwired, Dave. The first human didn't.
Yes, it is.
The first 2 humans didn't walk out hand in hand with M and F written on their bodies, did they? What happened was society organized itself a certain way. It chose to group itself into a certain way. People in the position of society. No, it didn't choose to group itself in a certain way. There was a reason men went off to hunt the fucking mammoth and women stayed home in the cave to take care of the kids and gather some fucking berries. That's actually not quite true, Dave. Plenty of fossils have shown
100%
plenty of fossils have shown that people, regardless of their anatomy, hunted, and so strong people go out and hunt. People who are less strong do other things.
The women ate the meat men hunted. Men ate the berries women picked.
Okay, Dave.
That's why you get the same shit in their goddamn gut.
People who are stronger go and do hunting because you are more able to strike killing blows and hunt and do all that stuff. People who are weaker, which doesn't matter on your gender, if you're just a weaker, smaller person, no, it's anyone with a smaller, smaller people. Went off and did
a 5'2" guy
can
kick the crap out of a 5'11" woman. I can literally take the #1 pound for pound MMA fighter in the woman if she's female, put her against a bum, an 0-5 MMA male fighter, and he kicked the crap out of her.
Actually, Dave, are you okay? We're going to ignore the fact that you're saying you could beat up professional fighters for a second.
I didn't say I said an 0-5 MMA fighter.
Dave, professional athletes
make her look like a bum. He kicked the shit out of her.
Also, I reckon that's not necessarily the case, but regardless, we're going to ignore athletics. We'll come back to that in a second. We're looking at patriarchy and society. That's something that people chose and choose to do. While society, it's bimodal, so most people are going to have
patriarchy is always natural. Women, sorry,
it's not natural. Dave. Okay, we're gonna have to. You say you're finishing at 7, right? Or what? Well, it's not 7 for you, is it? It's 3 o'clock. Did you say that?
3 o'clock.
Have you got?
You
got another person?
We
Dave,
got
coming on.
No, I don't believe so.
No?
But
You've
I
got
do have other
Blue in
shit
the
I have
comments
to do.
saying. Okay, we're gonna have to have a proper discussion about why you're wrong about patriarchy, part 3 of sorts at
Fine,
some
you
point.
can defend your bullshit point, but your bullshit
Which
position. But go ahead and make a final statement. Go ahead and make a final statement, and I make mine, or do you want me to make my final statement first?
you make yours first.
All right. Basically, this has been a much more longer and more spirited discussion than the last one. I would just like to point out that without capitalism, we do not enjoy anything that we enjoy right now. So, your TV that's connected to everything, your computer that's connected to everything, all the streaming services, all of the fucking creature comforts that you enjoy that you don't think about for 10 seconds in a day would not be here without the advent of capitalism. If we were to go over to a socialist system, you are going to be left with nothing except standing on a line waiting for a fucking potato. That's my final statement.
Okay, and as many, I've addressed all these things in the chat, so I won't go over them too much. But I think for anyone in the chat listening, I'm happy to speak to themselves. If you're, right wing and you're thinking, oh, what's going on about? Message me. We'll have our own conversation at some point. And if you're left wing, I'll happily chat to anyone. Anyhow, a better world than the one we live in, which is not good. No matter what Dave's saying about all these jobs and all this thing that's going well and stuff, we know there's something that's not quite right in this world, and that thing is capitalism. We are so much better. We are capable of so much better as a species, as individuals, as anything. And if we work together and believe there's more for us, we can make something better. Right. Thank you for having me on, Dave. You've got someone in the chat who thinks.
Alrighty. Thank you for coming on. I will see you later.
Oh, Dave, just before you go, are you gonna message me, or when are we going to organize this? Because your Twitter has no DM. I can't message you or anything. So when am I?
How about, let me pull up in a thing. How about the 25th, same time?
25th at the same time. Okay. And just before I do go, you've got a guy called a guy I know actually, Raptor Blue, who says that you scheduled a debate with him after me. Is this
It's news to me, but
well, I reckon you should speak to him, because I reckon there's a lot of interesting stuff that would be for you to chat about him.
Depends on if I let him on or not. All right.
Well, let him on, eh? Anyway, thank you, Dave. Right. You take care. See you very soon.
All right.
See you next week.